Good evening and welcome to the Year 11 GCSE Success Evening. My name is Nick Green. I'm the Assistant Principal responsible for Year 10 and Year 11. Hopefully I'm going to just take a few minutes of your time tonight to talk about some of the key messages that we're being given students about, firstly revision techniques, and then secondly about organisation and how to apply those revision techniques successfully throughout the exam period. I'm then going to just take a few minutes to talk about well-being and how as a school we can support students with their well-being, and how you as parents and carers can hopefully support students through what can be a very challenging time. I will turn my camera off for the rest of the presentation so you can focus on what's on the screen. For the purposes of this presentation, I've tried to break down what we think effective revision looks like into 6 key areas, and I will talk about each one in a while in a little bit more detail. But firstly, in terms of revisiting, what we'd expect a student to do is revisit previous information that they've already learnt, and then secondly, to reduce the amount of information related to a subject or a topic area and break that down into a series of key points. Thirdly, doing something with the information that they're trying to learn and remember. So rather than just reading a topic, actually doing something with that information, which again I'll talk about in a while. Fourthly, applying knowledge to exam questions, and this is one of the key parts of any revision process that your child will go through. From that, identifying strengths and weaknesses of the current knowledge to inform what is going to be revised next, and then checking by completing a revision checklist and ticking off when this has been completed so they know when to move on. The first thing I would say is that there's not one hard and fast rule, one size fits all for revision. We can give suggestions, but everyone will revise in a slightly different way, and the key is for what works, or finding out what works for each student. Now the practice exams are complete, it's now time to start working towards the exams that start at the beginning of May, and putting together a realistic timetable. And we'll give examples of that to the students through assemblies. There are 2 key things, I think, from a parent's perspective. The first one is to ensure that they have all the resources they need for effective revision, such as revision guides, highlighters, flashcards. The second key thing, I believe, is to ensure that your child is using the materials that have been recommended them to by our staff. They're not falling down the black hole that's Google, that they're actually using those materials which have all been posted on our website, so that they're not, for example, revising material that might not be specific to the exam board for a subject, that it is very specific to the specification that they are studying. After Easter, many of our departments will be running sessions after school from 2:50 to 3:50. Now, while this doesn't replace the vast majority of revision that will take place at home, I would encourage you to encourage your child to attend those if possible as part of their planned revision. The next 2 points on the screen really are there because we have a lot of our students who are working incredibly hard and very often are perfectionists, but it's important that we, parents, teachers, try to get the message across that more is not always the answer, and that it's more about the quality of the revision and other factors such as when they revise, which will result in that information going into the long-term memory. The point on the screen now is really for parents, and that I would advise for anyone not to compare what their child is doing with any other child, or what other parents say their child is doing in terms of the amount of revision that they're doing, because as I said at the start of this presentation, everybody's needs are different, and children will need to revise in different ways and for different lengths of time. Finally, it may be useful if you help with testing, so that you can be involved in the revision process with your child, and it certainly helps them in that they're having to prove that they know something, or prove to themselves, prove to you that they know something, and it'll also help them in terms of their retention and their understanding if they're able to explain a concept to you. One of the most important tasks for students to do is to create a revision timetable. I think this allows them to feel organised, plan appropriately, not feel overwhelmed. And I think it's then important for them to put that somewhere visible as a reminder for them and for parents, and that will help alleviate stress and help with the planning. I think it's useful to start backwards in some ways, and I think one of the first things to do is to be aware of when the exams are across the exam period and work backwards in terms of when it's appropriate to revise the different subjects. When they've done that, I think it's also important to prioritise what they feel confident with, what they're not so confident with, and starting with the subjects and specifically the topics within subjects where they may not feel as confident, or they know they've tested themselves and they know that they've got areas of weakness. Human nature says that a lot of students will start revising those areas that they feel more comfortable with to make themselves feel better. Departments will often ask students to RAG rate, so to highlight topics red, amber or green in terms of levels of difficulty or where they feel their weaknesses are, and that would be a great starting point in terms of when to put those topics into their revision. I've put on the screen there about 25 minutes. I think we used to think that we as long as you could sit there for hours and hours, that the information would somehow go in. We recommend that it's little and often. We talk about a technique called the Pomodoro technique, which allows students to work for about 25 minutes, have a 5-10 minute break, and then go back to the revision. And also within that period of maybe 2 or 3 sessions to actually vary how they revise and the topics that they are revising. Also within that, again, for the child, for the student, not to expect perfection is really important, because there will be times when they just don't feel like it, they may not be in the mood for revision, and sometimes it's okay to have a night off to say, I'm going to amend the plan and I'm going to change it. You can see on the screen now, this is just an extract from the English revision guidance that's on the website, and it's just a plan. And you can see on there on that weekly plan that the week is broken down into hour slots, and you can see within there that time away from revision is planned, whether it's watching football matches, playing sport, spending time with friends, and then the different subjects are in there. And then what would add to that is then for each subject, as this is an English one, what area of English are you going to revise? Is it literature? Is it an Inspector Calls? Is it Macbeth? What are the areas that you are going to revise within that 25-minute session, or those 2 25-minute sessions? You can see on the screen now a list of techniques that many of our students use for their revision, and many of them use these extremely effectively. Again, as I said earlier, it's really important that students are using those techniques that work particularly well for them. The 2 techniques that on the whole are less effective are simply reading through material, which some of our students still do, and using the highlighter, where what can happen is that they tend to take the paintbrush approach, where they're highlighting lots of material, lots of pages, rather than actually reducing the amount of highlighting to the key elements and the keywords that are important. The first 9 on the screen there are all designed to help knowledge recall, and again, as I said earlier, they are used really well on the whole by our students. However, the last point, exam question practice, is absolutely vital, and this is one that I want to talk about a little bit more. So the application of knowledge is absolutely vital. We talk about the process that you can see on the screen in front of you now. So the process of revising, reviewing, revising again, and then applying. So students revise, they then need to review that revision to identify the weaknesses, and then revise again to address those weaknesses, and then to apply it to exam questions. On the screen now you'll see a list of techniques that I use to apply the knowledge that students have revised to the actual exam questions, and these tend to be the kind of techniques that our students are not utilising quite as much as the other techniques such as flashcards and mind mapping. As I said earlier, this application, this part of the revision is absolutely vital. And again, please have a look at each department section on the website, where there will be links to examples, to the exam board, to past papers and to mark schemes, which students can be using to apply their knowledge. And the next few slides, I do believe, are probably the most important slides in the presentation, because if students get this right, then all the techniques that I discussed earlier in the presentation will be a lot more effective. On the screen there is a link there to a short NHS video which looks at how to support young people with their well-being. I'll start by saying that I think getting young people into a healthy routine over the next few weeks is really important, particularly during weekends and with the holidays such as the Easter holidays that are coming up and Spring Bank, when young people have more flexibility about how they spend their time and when they plan their revision. So I think routines is absolutely vital over the revision and exam period. One of the most important elements in a young person's routine is their sleep pattern, both in terms of how much sleep they're getting and the quality of that sleep. For example, are they revising late into the evening so they cannot switch off? Is their bedtime consistent? Are they on their phones? Are they on devices before bedtime, which can affect the quality of the sleep? And we know that sleep is absolutely vital for all those connections to be made, for the revision that's being done earlier in the day, for that to be cemented in the long-term memory during that period of sleep. I think this next one is probably going to be the most challenging for any young person who is trying to revise effectively. What we do know from asking our Year 11 students in a questionnaire early in the year, that many of our students are spending an excessive amount of time on their phones, some up to 8 hours a day. When revising, students need to be revising, and we know that every time a student receives a notification, that concentration is broken and it takes time to regain that focus. And then let alone if they were to respond to that notification, a big chunk of that 25 minutes of revision time can be taken up in regaining focus, having responded to a notification, and the session is really lost. So it's really important that students, parents find an agreement as to how to manage that device, whether it be switching it off, whether it be on airplane mode, whether it be finding a different way of timing the revision other than a mobile phone. The questionnaire that I mentioned on the previous slide with regards to mobile devices, on that same questionnaire, our students told us that up to 45% of Year 11 students do not have breakfast in the morning, and some students are also compensating for that by drinking energy drinks on the way to school, and then having something at 10 o'clock, such as a sausage sandwich or a bacon sandwich. So I think the nutrition side is really important, particularly during the exam period, where very often they won't have access to our breaks because they will be in exams, and sometimes they'll have back-to-back exams. They'll have 2 in a day, and occasionally if there's a clash they may have 3 exams in a day. So it's really important that they're getting the right food, the right drink and the right nutrients to feed their brain during the exam period. We have talked a lot this year in assemblies and in mentor time about the importance of revision, but we've also balanced that ourselves with getting the message about the students finding balance away from school work, spending time with family, friends, physical activities, rest and relaxation. And if they can find that balance, and then the revision will be more effective, it'll put them in a more positive frame of mind, it'll affect mood, and it'll have a positive effect on their well-being and the function of their brains to help their revision. The first 2 bullet points on the screen in front of you there are really a plea for students to avoid cramming the night before an exam, that the bulk of the revision should be put in place between now and the exam period, and that time before the exam, the night before an exam, should be used really to just hone and tweak their revision. The third bullet point is really key because our morning exams will start at 8:45 AM, so we expect students to be in the amphitheatre by 8:30, and the afternoon exams start at 1 PM, so all students must be in the amphitheatre for 12:45, so we can get them organised and they can get to their examination room or the sports hall for the start of that examination. Mentioned this earlier, and I think in terms of the preparation for those exams, it's really important that they stick to the normal routine. For example, going to bed, getting up at the normal time and preparing in the same way. Another little reminder is around that uniform will be compulsory. The last thing a student wants to be doing before an exam on a morning is running around stressing about where uniform is, where their tie is, that they are organised and they are ready for school and ready for that examination. And the final point I make on this slide is that they can take water into the exam, but without a label and certainly no food. And it's important again that they're not running around last minute for equipment, looking for protractors, calculators, peeling the labels off water bottles, that they're organised and they're ready for each exam. Finally, on behalf of all the staff at Penston Grammar School, I'd just like to take this opportunity to wish all our Year 11 students all the success they deserve in the upcoming exams. They are a fantastic year group and we've got every confidence that they'll perform really well in the summer. If you have any more queries, please do contact the school via the inquiries email, and that will be directed to the most appropriate member of staff, or please do use the resources that have been posted on the website tonight if it's linked to departmental information. Thank you for listening.